Before there was internet fraud and phone scams, there were always swindlers. Female swindlers too. Discover the stories of women from the past who not only survived but thrived as con artists and thieves. How did they use their feminine characteristics to swindle in a world where men made the rules? Join me, Lucy Worsley, historian and author, and my all-female team in Lady Swindlers, wherever you get your podcasts.
Jon Stewart is back in the host chair at The Daily Show, which means he's also back in our ears on The Daily Show Ears Edition podcast. Join late-night legend Jon Stewart and the best news team for today's biggest headlines, exclusive extended interviews, and more. Now this is a second term we can all get behind. Listen to The Daily Show Ears Edition on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Handy. I'm an associate producer at Wonder Media Network, and I'm excited to be guest hosting this episode of Womanica. This month, we're diving into the divas of history, examining how the label has been used from many angles, whether describing women pejoratively or with admiration. Today, we're talking about an 18th century maid, mistress, and muse. She rose from poverty to capture the attention of British aristocracy. Let's talk about Emma Hamilton. Emma was born in a mining village in Cheshire around 1765. Her father died shortly after her birth, leaving Emma and her mother to support themselves. When Emma was 13 years old, she began working as a maid, and within a few years, left to work in London. There, Emma got her first taste of a high-profile life, but it didn't last long. Soon, perhaps due to an unplanned pregnancy, Emma was living and working in a brothel. Emma's fortunes soon changed when she became the mistress of a wealthy aristocrat named Sir Henry Harry Fanshawe. At 16 years old, Emma began ingraining herself in Harry's social circle. But yet again, Emma's time with the aristocrats was cut short. When Harry discovered Emma was pregnant, he kicked her out of his home and left her penniless. Emma pleaded for Harry to take her back, to no avail. She then tried writing to one of Harry's wealthy friends, Sir Charles Greville. Charles was willing to move Emma into his home under 3 conditions. 1, she was to give up her child and cut ties with her family, save her mother. 2, that she abandon her last name. And 3, never show ungratefulness. Emma obliged and moved to Charles's London villa. Emma's relationship with Charles was more fruitful than her previous ones. Within a month, Charles introduced her to the portrait artist George Romney. George was taken by Emma's beauty and made her his muse. Throughout their friendship, Emma appeared in more than 70 paintings and sketches. George painted Emma as figures in mythology, history, and literature in addition to conventional society portraits. The duo's most famous work is The Spinstress. In the painting, Emma is dressed in all white with a headscarf. She's pulling thread from the spinning wheel while chickens sit at her feet. She's looking over her shoulder in an almost seductive manner. George Romney's paintings made Emma somewhat of a spectacle. She was brought to high society parties and introduced to other artists who she also posed for. But Emma's social station was once again at risk. Charles was running low on money and planned on marrying a wealthy heiress to solve his problems. He just had to get rid of Emma first. So, he introduced her to his uncle, Sir William Hamilton, who was over 30 years older than Emma. Around Emma's 21st birthday, Charles sent her and her mother to William's home in Naples. Emma was under the impression that she would be staying there for a few months. When Charles ignored her letters asking to return, she was furious. Charles eventually answered Emma's letters, encouraging her to go to bed with William. Emma relented. It turned out life with William wasn't too bad. He entertained artists and scholars at his home, showered Emma with gifts, and provided her with language, history, and singing lessons. Emma even hosted parties with William at their home, where she would perform her act, Attitudes. Attitudes was a charades-like game in which Emma would perform different poses that evoked well-known sculptures or paintings. Partygoers then tried to identify the artwork. The performance gained notoriety after an artist published sketches of Emma acting out some of her most famous poses. Everything seemed to be looking up for Emma. Her fame continued to grow, and in 1791, she and William married. Emma had risen through the ranks of society to become Lady Hamilton. Shortly thereafter, the French Revolution began, and by the spring of 1793, Great Britain had entered the war against France. Following a British victory at the Battle of the Nile in August of 1798, British Admiral Horatio Nelson and his fleet were celebrated in Naples. Emma and William welcomed the war hero into their home. Emma caught Horatio's eye, and vice versa. Their attraction grew into intimacy, and eventually, the two developed a passionate love affair. Horatio was also married, and while his wife begged for the chance to visit him in Italy, he refused. Exactly how much William knew about the affair and when is debated. An open secret at best, Emma's entanglement with Horatio was made explicit when she became pregnant with Horatio's child. Horatio formally left his wife and moved with Emma and William back to England, where in 1800 they lived as a brazen throuple. Emma named their child Horatia, after her lover. 3 years later, she gave birth to their second child. But the baby died in infancy. That same year, William also died. With William gone, Emma was no longer welcomed in high society. Her invitations to parties were for entertainment only, and she barely had enough money left to support her expensive taste. In 1805, Horatio was killed during battle. Just beforehand, Horatio had amended his will, specifying that Emma should be taken care of. But his wishes were not honored. Emma's friends abandoned her. Her frivolous spending caused her to sell her home and valuables. A few years later, Emma was imprisoned for debt. In the summer of 1814, Emma fled to France with her daughter, but by January of the following year, she had died. She was around 49 years old. All month, we're talking about divas. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to co-creators Jenny and Liz Kaplan for having me as a guest host. Talk to you tomorrow.
Before there was internet fraud and phone scams, there were always swindlers. Female swindlers too. Discover the stories of women from the past who not only survived but thrived as con artists and thieves. How did they use their feminine characteristics to swindle in a world where men made the rules? Join me, Lucy Worsley, historian and author, and my all-female team in Lady Swindlers, wherever you get your podcasts.
Jon Stewart is back in the host chair at The Daily Show, which means he's also back in our ears on The Daily Show Ears Edition podcast. Join late-night legend Jon Stewart and the best news team for today's biggest headlines, exclusive extended interviews, and more. Now this is a second term we can all get behind. Listen to The Daily Show Ears Edition on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.